All right, so we are live, sixth episode of Draft Talk. The draft is right around the corner, 2 weeks from today, and today I'm joined by the one and only Austin Gayle. Welcome to the show, Austin.
Thanks for having me, man.
It's really great to have you here. He obviously doesn't need introduction, but I'll make it anyway. He's the Associate Director of Content at PFF, the unbelievable host of 2-on-1 Draft Talk. Does a tremendous job every single day interviewing prospects. It's also a must follow on Twitter. Tremendous job every single day, great content. It's unbelievable to have you here. It's really great to have you here, Austin.
I really appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me.
So today we'll talk about Kyle Pitts, one of the best prospect overall of this draft, maybe the best non-quarterback prospect of this draft. He has a chance to be the first tight end to be selected in the history of the NFL in the top 5. So what's your opinion on Austin, on Kyle Pitts? Is he your best, your highest ranked player, not non-quarterback, or you have Jamar Chase or Devontae Smith maybe above him? What's your opinion on him?
Yeah, I do think that Kyle Pitts very well could be the first non-quarterback drafted. Right now on our PFF draft board, he is the first non-quarterback ranked. Kyle Pitts, I do think, is that rare tight end prospect, that generational tight end prospect that you just don't see every 5 to 10 years. I think even when you compare him to other tight ends that were drafted highly, Eric Ebron, TJ Hawkinson, OJ Howard, David Njoku, I mean, he's better than all those guys. Much better prospect than all those guys. So when you consider him versus some of the tight ends we've seen drafted inside the top 10, I mean, TJ Hawkinson for Detroit was drafted at number 8 overall. The fact that Kyle Pitts could be a top 5 pick, I don't think is crazy. And I do think that if he's still on the board when the Cincinnati Bengals are picking at number 5, I think they're going to take him. Or Miami at 6. Very well could take Kyle Pitts right there at 6. Detroit, I don't know if they do, considering they've already invested highly at the position. But it's so hard to pass on a talent like Kyle Pitts. I do think he is as advertised. It'll be wild to me if he doesn't turn out to be one of the better tight ends in the NFL right out of the gate.
That's definitely a good point, because one of the most common questions of this draft process was, all right, he's a walking mismatch, a dynamic offensive weapon, but what makes him different from the Evan Ingrams, the Eric Ebrons? They all turned out in being great tight end options, but not an absolute studs like Travis Kelce, George Kittle, that type of weapons. So the expectations will be very high on him, but he showed last year why he's maybe the best tight end prospect of the last decade for sure. Maybe Vernon Davis was also a really strong prospect. So he's that type of special prospect. As you can see below, there are some facts on Kyle Pitts. He was he has the highest graded season for a tight end since 2014 for PFF with a 96.2 grade. He had a tremendous season last year with Kyle Trask under center, and I love how Dan Mullen during this draft process called him as he's a unicorn, said about him, because he's really that kind of unguardable offensive player. You can put him as an X receiver, you can put him in a slot, you can put him as a kneel line tight end. He can do it all on the field. So I love what you say about the Cincinnati Bengals, because if he will be on the board at 5, it wouldn't be crazy to draft him, even if their biggest need is to draft an offensive lineman. It could be Penei Sewell, it could be Rashawn Slater. But I mean, when you have on the board that type of prospect, a tight end, like you said, that doesn't come around every 5-10 years, that's what you have to do maybe. And do you like the fit with the Dolphins? They already have Mike Gesicki, but I mean, he's a totally different player from Gesicki. So what do you think the Dolphins, if the Dolphins will have Jamar Chase and Kyle Pitts both on the board at 6, what will you pick for them?
Yeah, it's tough. I do like Gesicki, and I know they do as well. But I do think that regardless of who you have at tight ends, he's just not a redundant piece of your offense. I think if you have an opportunity to add a Kyle Pitts to your offense, it shouldn't matter who else you have on your football team. Like, it really shouldn't, because he is that different of a prospect. You have to find a way to get both Gesicki and Kyle Pitts on the football field if you're that confident in both. And I don't think that's a bad position to be in, if the Miami Dolphins do have an opportunity to draft Kyle Pitts with Devontae Parker, with Preston Williams, and now Will Fuller added in free agency. You have Will Fuller, Devontae Parker, Preston Williams, Mike Gesicki, and then if you add a Kyle Pitts to that, I mean, you put Tua Tagovailoa in a really good position. And then at the back end of the first, you can potentially swing the bat, or top of the second, swing the bat on an offensive lineman and continue to add along that offensive line. It'll be very interesting to see where the Miami Dolphins go. I'm of the opinion that any team taking a non-quarterback inside the top 10, if Kyle Pitts is available to them, you do it.
Yeah, absolutely, because obviously the Dolphins need to protect Tua because they had a little bit of struggles last year with the offensive line. They had two rookies. They didn't perform very well, and Austin Jackson, so they'll need to do it. But I mean, these offensive linemen, these offensive tackles class is really deep. And you don't have another option like Kyle Pitts on the board. You will not have it at 18. You will not have it in the second round. So, I mean, if you have him on the board at 5, at 6, you have to take him. Even if Penei Sewell, drops at 6 probably. It will be interesting, but it will be crazy to draft him at 6 before Penei Sewell. And I have to admit that one of my favorite fits of this draft overall is Kyle Pitts to the Atlanta Falcons, because the Falcons now have a new coach, Arthur Smith. Used a lot of two tight end sets at Tennessee. Anthony Ferguson, John Smith, both on the field, and used John Smith as a weapon, just like Dan Mullen used Kyle Pitts last season. So it wouldn't be crazy to see him in Atlanta as an added weapon to that offense. What do you think about the fit with the Falcons?
I think that's a great fit. I do think that if Atlanta doesn't take a quarterback or doesn't trade out of the number 4 overall pick, I think they're probably leaning Kyle Pitts. And talking about a team that you add Kyle Pitts to the mix, Hayden Hurst, Calvin Ridley, Julio Jones, Matt Ryan. I mean, there's just enough firepower offensively for the Atlanta Falcons to put up points. And regardless of how good that defense will be, putting up points in this league is what matters. Having a top 5, top 3 offense in the NFL is going to take you so much further than having a top 10, top 5 defense. I think the other thing I'd add too is that a lot of I've seen some mock drafts that have them taking Penei Sewell, but they're still trying to develop Caleb McGarry there. Caleb McGarry at offensive tackle, the option Chris Lynch.
Absolutely.
And then Jake Matthews is one of the highest paid offensive tackles in the NFL. Like, you can't really afford to move on from him necessarily either. So I do think that Penei Sewell, does he have the path to the field? Sure, but you already invested that high draft pick in Caleb McGarry. I think they'd be smarter at grabbing Kyle Pitts, continuing to develop McGarry, a guy that they drafted knowing he was very raw with a ton of tools. So I'm interested to see what Atlanta does it for. I think I would trade back if given an opportunity to get a future first-round pick, say from Denver, New England, Washington, any of those teams looking to come up for a quarterback. But if they stay put and don't have an offer that they like, staying put and grabbing Kyle Pitts would help this offense a ton.
Absolutely. The Falcons, they're probably one of the most unpredictable franchises in this draft, because a lot of people used to give them a quarterback at 4 at the beginning of this draft process. But, well, after Matt Ryan reconstruction of the contract, he still needs to he will be on the Falcons as the starter for at least the next 2 seasons, maybe more. So it makes sense to add that kind of a weapon like Kyle Pitts, help him with another offensive weapon, just like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers made with Tom Brady. Put him a lot of weapons around him, solid defense. Obviously, the Falcons will not have the defense that the Buccaneers have, but just to help him to go on offense. And it will be pretty unguardable to have Julio, Calvin Ridley, Aiden Hurst, and Kyle Pitts in the same offense, like you said. Mm-hmm. Also, some sources say that Jerry Jones was infatuated with Kyle Pitts and was maybe considering to trade up at 4 to try to get him. It will be pretty crazy for the Cowboys that have so many needs. What do you think about this trade that obviously is nothing sure, but it will be pretty crazy?
I highly doubt that would be just wild to me. I don't think the Dallas Cowboys would trade what they need to trade, probably a future first-round pick, to go up and get a tight end. As good as Kyle Pitts is, and I do think he's the best tight end we've seen in the past 5-10 years, it's just going to be very difficult to be so good that you're more valuable than potentially the player the Dallas Cowboys could pick at 10, and obviously the player they could pick with that future first-round pick in 2022. Like, to be as good as 2 players drafted in the first round, not only do you have to be like the best at your position, you have to offer so much at a position that's already kind of low value. So I don't think I think the Dallas Cowboys would love Kyle Pitts the same way they loved CeeDee Lamb when they were surprised he fell all the way to 17. I didn't think the Dallas Cowboys were not going to take a wide receiver in the first round. But then if CeeDee Lamb falls into your lap, you do it. And I think in the same vein, if Kyle Pitts, for whatever reason, falls to the Dallas Cowboys at 10, I mean, they're going to sprint the card in. Like, that would not surprise me at all. There is not a single offense in the NFL that has too many weapons to ignore a Kyle Pitts. I'm telling you, man. I do think he's that good. And I definitely think that regardless if you have Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley, Amari Cooper and Michael Gallup, and CeeDee Lamb, adding a piece like Kyle Pitts is not going to hurt your offense.
Absolutely. I totally agree because, trading up to 4, it's maybe too expensive and makes no sense. But if he falls to 8, falls to 9, maybe a trade up for 2 spots, or if he falls to 10, I definitely think that the Cowboys will draft him if he falls to 10. Maybe the Carolina Panthers are another franchise that can have him. They now have a young quarterback in Sam Darnold. They need to protect him and to give him some weapons. They already have Robbie Anderson and DJ Moore, which is by far definitely better than what we had at New York. But as we said multiple times, if you have the opportunity to add that kind of special prospect, you have to do it. And now, do you have some concerns about Kyle Pitts, considering how Evan Ingram and Eric Kibber in the past had some troubles at having a huge impact right away? Or do you think he'll do it without doubts in whatever franchise he will go to? He will have that kind of an impact from day one.
I do think the only concerns I have with Kyle Pitts is that, he's still very young. It could take some time for him to just mature at the NFL level to be like a legit professional. I think he's only 20 years old. That's no knock on Kyle Pitts. There are no, from what I've heard, any maturity concerns with Kyle Pitts. But the guy can't even buy a beer yet. There's still a lot to learn, in terms of getting older and being a part of that offense and things like that. I think the other thing is that he's going to have a lot of high expectations. He's going to come in the NFL. The way that people are talking about this kid, and probably rightfully so, they're talking about him like he can change the game. He can be a legitimate Hall of Fame caliber tight end. Some people want to put the gold jacket on him now, and that's hard to handle mentally. I think that's hard to handle at 20 years old when people think you can be the best in the NFL at 20 years old. As physically good as he is, as athletic as he is, he's going to enter the NFL with really high expectations. I think the last piece with Kyle Pitts is that usage will be important. To get the most out of Kyle Pitts, you have to play him very creatively. You have to play him similar to how the Chiefs play Travis Kelce or the Raiders play Darren Waller, and that you play him at outside receiver. You play him in line. You play him in the slot. You have to do all that type of stuff. So if he does get paired with an offensive coordinator that's maybe not creative or willing enough to get, to get diverse with his role, then you're going to see his impact limited.
Yeah, absolutely. Because as we saw with Evan Ingram, the Giants changed a lot of offensive coordinators and head coaches, so he had some troubles at adapting to new offenses. And we can say pretty safely that Garrett is not the most creative offensive coordinator in the NFL. So he can. That Evan Ingram could be a huge factor, a bigger factor in another franchise. So as you say, you put on a perfect point because the usage is always important. Maybe we can say that the usage sometimes is as important as having talent, because going to a franchise that has an offensive coordinator, a huge mind Joe Brady with the Carolina Panthers, that did a tremendous job at LSU in 2019. He did a tremendous job last year at developing DJ Moore. If he goes to that type of offense with that kind of offensive coordinator, he can be like a Darren Waller type of player with that type of impact right away. That's a great point. So we have a question, meanwhile, from Filippo that asks, what is the biggest need for the Giants for the 11th pick, edge rusher or offensive lineman? And we have to take into consideration that maybe Jalen Waddle or Devontae Smith could be available at that pick also.
I do think
What's your opinion on that?
I love Jalen Waddle to the New York Giants. I think there's an opportunity potentially to take a Rashawn Slater, or if Penei Sewell falls. I don't think he falls as far as 11. I know a lot of Giants fans want to potentially look at offensive line because they obviously added Kenny Galladay. And you have Kenny Galladay, Darius Slayton, Sterling Shepard, Evan Ingram, You could argue that you have a lot of talent at pass catcher, but I do think that what helps this offense more than maybe a Rashawn Slater, because you'd have to kick him inside the guard with Nate Solder coming back and Andrew Thomas, obviously the former number 4 overall pick. Rather than taking an offensive lineman at 11, I think you take one of the big name receivers, whether that's Devontae Smith, Jamar Chase, or Jalen Waddle at 11, and then look at the top of round 2 to potentially add along the offensive line. Because you can't – the number one question, the multi-million-dollar question for the New York Giants this coming season is, can we build around Daniel Jones enough to win and be competitive? And right now, that's still a question mark. Getting an answer starts with building a legit supporting cast around him, and I think Jalen Waddle does exactly that.
Yeah, Daniel Jones doesn't look like the modern prototype of quarterback, like the one that can make every type of throw off schedule, out of the structure, great arm talent. He doesn't look like that, at least for now, but he's has good mobility, can extend plays. Mm-hmm. So I think that the Giants did a great job at adding Kenny Galladay to the mix and help him with a great weapon for next season. But I definitely agree. I think that they don't have the dimension that Jalen Waddle could bring to that offense. So yards after the catch machine, great deep threat, but he's also an underrated route runner, I think. Usually when people talk about speedster, they only talk about how they do with the ball in their hands or as deep threats, but Jalen Waddle run precise routes on all 3 levels. So that will be a great addition for the Giants.
Yeah, I agree, man. I really do like Jalen Waddle a lot.
So I think that we have talked about Kyle Pitts. We have touched pretty much every point that we could touch about Kyle Pitts, and I would like to have an opinion on Jamar Chase, because I'm really a huge fan of Jamar Chase. I have him ranked as my best non-quarterback prospect of this draft, from really, really, really a little point over Kyle Pitts. The only question mark that was around Jamar Chase was his athleticism, because he was not a burner at LSU, not a huge yards after the catch receiver, but he showed up big time at his pro day, running a magnificent 40-yard dash. So what's your opinion on Jamar Chase, and what do you think will be his better fit in the NFL?
I love Jamar Chase. I do think that, the primary concerns with him right now is that, he's not creating separation early in the route like you do see with a Jalen Waddle or Devontae Smith. I think there's room to improve with his release package and those things, but you're not going to find a guy that's more physically gifted than Jamar Chase really in this class. I do think from a size and strength standpoint, at least, there's faster guys, there's better route runners, these different things, but you're just not going to find a bigger bully at the position than Jamar Chase. I think a comparison that I do really like is Dez Bryant in some ways. Dez Bryant wasn't, completely mixing people at the line of scrimmage and creating the separation. He was winning as a big-bodied contested catch guy. I think he's kind of a bit of a smaller Dez Bryant, in my opinion. Jamar Chase really does can bully kids and do these different things. And I think at 19 years old, what he did in the SEC against future first-round, second-round type of cornerbacks was just absurd. I think he gets in, whether he gets drafted by Cincinnati, Miami, I think Detroit could swing the bat at 7. I could see Atlanta potentially going after him. I mean, there's a lot of teams that could potentially swing the bat on Jamar Chase. I think he ultimately goes inside the top 7 picks, if not top 8 picks. And for that reason, I think any of those offenses that are willing to go grab him, whether that's Atlanta, Cincinnati, Miami, Detroit, or Carolina at 8, I think you're going to see him hit the ground running. That's how good Jamar Chase is. I am not worried about him translating to the next level. I think his floor is a very talented, big-bodied, bully-type receiver.
Yeah, and he's not even the tallest receiver in this class, but he can really climb the ladder, go in the sky and catch the ball. And it's a great point what you bring up, because what he did at 19 isn't normal. Mm-hmm. He literally bullied week in, week out every cornerback he faced, from AJ Terrell in the national championship game to Trevon Diggs against Alabama. He really dominated them, even in a more impressive way than I think Devontae Smith did it this year, because he was a senior and Jamar Chase was only a sophomore. In his first season as a starter, he did something legendary, I think. So I don't know if the Falcons will swing the bat with him, because probably I mean, Cal Pitts is as a type of skill set that they don't already have on the roster. Meanwhile, they already have Julio and Calvin Ridley. Maybe they could go for Cal Pitts, but I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Cincinnati tries to rebuild the connection with Joe Burrow and go with them at 5.
No, I really do think that Joe Burrow is pounding the table for a Jamar Chase. I mean, I think there's a reason why they went out and signed Riley Reef. You know, they have Jonah Williams there, obviously. Yeah. They go out and sign Riley Reef. It doesn't necessarily solve their issues at offensive tackle, but it gets them closer to average along the offensive line. Potentially gives them an opportunity to go get a Jamar Chase or Kyle Pitts at number 5. I think Joe Burrow likely wants that. I think the Cincinnati Bengals likely want that. I was talking to Peter Schrager of NFL Media recently, and he said the Bengals don't know what they want right now, but they want one of the big names. They want Jamar Chase, they want Penei Sewell, they want Kyle Pitts. One of those guys, maybe Slater in the mix as well. Like, they want one of those guys to come in and play for Joe Burrow, prop up that offensive side of the ball. And I don't think they can go wrong. Like, you can't go wrong picking Sewell, Slater, Chase, or Pitts. All 4 of those guys are legitimate game-changing prospects.
Yeah, they are also in a great position because, I mean, at 9% of the times they will have at least one between Kyle Pitts, Jamar Chase, and Penei Sewell to pick at 5. So they will not go wrong probably. So now we have 2 interesting questions, starting from an Eagles-related question. Would you go for Micah Parsons or J.C. Horn / Patrick Surtain if it will not be picked by Dallas Cowboys or Denver Broncos for the Philadelphia Eagles? Obviously, just in case Micah falls to that position.
I think I would go either Horn or Surtain. I think I'd lean Surtain. I like Patrick Surtain and J.C. Horn ahead of Micah Parsons in the first round, largely because of positional value. And, I mean, some of the off-field stuff with Micah Parsons does scare me. But if I'm the Eagles, I would love to see Patrick Surtain on the board at 12. If he's still there, I think you have to do it.
I mean, yes, they will. In this case, they will have a big piece on Darius Slay, 2 big corners. They have absolutely a need in that position, so it will be great to J.C. Horn. I personally have J.C. Horn ranked over Patrick Surtain because I love the way he plays the game mentally. He has that the mental side of the big corners like Jalen Ramsey, a corner that can get inside your mind and play mind games every single snap with you. So Horn will be a great pick for the Eagles. Now, another interesting question about this wide receiver class. There are a lot of prospects, but slot receiver only. Do you think it's a concern? And looking back, we might end up feeling underwhelmed about this class compared to the expectations?
Say that question again. I missed it.
Okay, you can see it on the screen, I think. It's about the wide receiver class. Alex says that there are a lot of slot receivers. So at the end, we might be underwhelmed about this class compared to the expectations.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I do think that it's interesting because, Kadarius Toney probably mostly plays in the slot in his career. I think Elijah Moore of Ole Miss is a slot receiver build, but could hang on the outside at the next level because he's just a dynamic athlete. I mean, Toney could too if he comes out and is a little bit more polished and grows as a route runner in the NFL. And then Rondale Moore, probably slot only. Darden of North Texas, Tutu Atwell of Louisville. You have a lot of guys.
Elijah Moore, maybe.
Yeah, Elijah Moore. I think you do have a lot of guys that are some of these slot-only types. I think the interesting ones are obviously the big 3, Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith, Jamar Chase, guys that can be true number 1 receivers in the NFL. And then I think after that, Rashad Bateman of Minnesota, Elijah Moore, Ole Miss, and then De'Ami Brown, UNC, Terrace Marshall, LSU. Those are guys that I think could hang on the outside that are going to be drafted inside the top 50. Josh Palmer, Tennessee, interesting name as well.
Yeah, I also like a lot Nico Collins from Michigan. He opted out last year, but he showed a nice size speed combo. Great receiver in traffic. Nice yards after catch ability. But by far, this will be slot receiver. It will be dominated by slot receiver this draft class. So it could we be probably be underwhelmed because there are lots of receivers that need to polish their traits, just like you said. Kadarius Toney, great yards after the catch ability, but is really unrefined from a route running standpoint, just like Rondell Moore.
Yeah, I do think that we could be underwhelmed. I mean, Kadarius Toney, when I was talking to Nate Tice of Bleacher Report, he sees a lot of things on tape where it's like, man, you're going to have to coach this guy up. I think you're going to have to coach this guy up. You could get underwhelmed by Terrace Marshall if he's asked to transition to the outside in the NFL, because obviously he played a ton of slot in his best season for LSU. You could be underwhelmed because Rondell Moore is going to have to be used, kind of so interestingly out of the backfield, maybe out of the slot, and those types of things. So I'm interested to see, and like Jalen Waddle's coming off an ankle injury. Jamar Chase hasn't played football in a year. There's a lot. Devontae Smith, the weight stuff. I mean, there's a lot of reasons to potentially be underwhelmed with this receiving core for sure.
Yeah, I mean, there is not. Maybe Kyle Pitts comes out as the prospect with less concerns from this pass catching group, this pass catching class. And another question asks you about what do you think about Terrace Marshall Jr. because he is maybe the most hyped wide receiver lately, because after that great pro day, I mean, he ran in the 440s at that weight. It's not normal. He has definitely wheels. Do you think it could be has the potential to match maybe Kyle Pitts or Jamar Chase even from a potential standpoint if he develops well in the NFL?
Yeah, I really do like Terrace Marshall Jr. I don't know if Justin Jefferson, I think, had better ball skills, just overall a little bit more polished coming out.
Yeah.
With that, Terrace Marshall Jr., the trajectory, the arrow is pointing up. He just hasn't had a lot of reps being the guy. Obviously, in 2019, Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase dominated. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Thaddeus Moss. I mean, there was just so much talent on that LSU offense. He was third or fourth fiddle in that thing. And then now, as the focal point with lower quarterback play, broke out a little bit. So I was definitely impressed with what he did this past season. I'm interested to see, where teams play him right out of the gate. Do they want him in the slot? Are they going to have him on the outside? He doesn't have a ton of reps against press coverage in his college career. It's going to be interesting to see, how much more, what his usage will be. I love talking to him on the podcast. He's a really, really good interview. He's a really smart player. I'm interested to see how teams use him and kind of get the most out of Terrace Marshall.
Yeah, because I mean, if the concerns about him was shadowed by Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson in 2019, as you said, in 2020, he had the opportunity to be the feature receiver in that offense, and he showed out big time. So I mean, I think he has the potential to be a wide receiver one in the NFL. So just to touch, also the other big name of this draft class, Rashad Bateman. Alex says he's a bit biased because he went to Minnesota, but he loves Rashad Bateman, and he thinks he will overperform his draft slot. I mean, I said for the whole of season that when I hear about Rashad Bateman, I hear about Justin Jefferson last year. A bit definitely underrated. He has the potential really to overperform big time that draft slot.
Yeah, I really do think. I mean, I've heard that he could fall to round 2, and any team that takes Rashad Bateman in round 2 is going to get a damn good receiver. Like, he is a very, very productive receiver. His floor is so high. I think he has one of the highest floors of any receiver in this class. And I think if he does fall to round 2, he could have. I don't know if it's going to be Justin Jefferson-like impact, but I think he could have a very, very strong high-end impact, especially depending on situation. Because I do think he's going to need opportunity. You'd love to see him able to work in a starting role, whether that's outside or in the slot out of the gate. And I'll tell you right now, if he gets drafted after the first 32 picks, they're going to be talking about a steal in the draft.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's obviously big time difficult to have a Justin Jefferson type of season. Maybe at the best. No, definitely had the best season ever for a rookie receiver. So it will not be easy. But I love the. By the way, to see him on the Titans that just lost Corey Davis in free agency, adding beside AJ Brown in a play action heavy offense. I mean that could be a great spot for him.
Say that last part again. I missed it.
I would love to have him to see him with the Titans in a play action heavy offense. I think that could be a great fit for him.
Yeah, no, Titans would be awesome. I think the Jets in round 2 would be sick.
Yeah.
The Jaguars, I was saying, no one's talking about this. Jaguars obviously have Trevor Lawrence coming number 1 overall. Then they have another first-round pick at number 25, where they could take a corner, a safety, Barmore, Alabama, and then at the top of round 2, you grab another receiver like Rashad Bateman there to pair with DJ Chark, Laviska Shenault Jr., James Robinson. I like that fit a lot too.
Yeah, that's definitely underrated. So it's 3 p.m. ET in Cincinnati, 9 p.m. in Italy. So we have to wrap things up. I can thank you enough, Austin. It was really great to have you here. I want to thank you personally for the opportunity. Keep up the great work. I love to hear your interviews on the podcast. It's really been great to have you here. Really, thanks a lot.
Awesome. Thank you.
So we can wrap things up. Next Thursday we'll be back with another episode. Thanks a lot to everyone that watched us and asked questions. It has been a great time. Thanks a lot to all of you guys, and thanks a lot, Austin.